Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. The moment you pick up a small copper coin minted in 1980, something strange happens. Your mind instantly wonders how something so tiny, so ordinary, so familiar in everyday American circulation, could suddenly transform into an object people whisper about, an object some collectors now believe could be worth hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars under the right circumstances. Imagine holding a 1-cent coin that millions of people once walked past without even looking, a coin tossed in grocery store trays, dropped in vending machines, lost in car seats, buried under sofa cushions, mixed in jars, and forgotten for decades. Yet today, one single variation of that same coin is rumored to carry a staggering market value tied to rare errors, deep historical significance, and extreme collector demand. Now imagine learning that somewhere, hidden in boxes, piggy banks, old jars, estate sales, and dusty basements, there might still be a version of the 1981-cent Lincoln penny so rare that its estimated collector value exceeds expectations so dramatically that people are calling it one of the most unexpectedly valuable modern pennies ever to exist. With speculative private market estimates going as high as $231 million in extreme cases of one-of-a-kind error specimens, making it one of the most sensational stories circulating in the coin collecting world right now. Think about that for a second. A single cent, something worth basically nothing to most people, suddenly becoming a treasure so massive that if you found one in perfect condition with certain kinds of minting anomalies or ultra-rare striking mistakes, it could change someone's financial life instantly. And what makes this story even more unbelievable is that the 1980 penny was produced in enormous quantities, billions upon billions of them. Minted from copper-clad metal, weighing right around 3.11 grams, designed with the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right. This coin should have been one of the most common, most boring, most ordinary pieces of circulating currency in the entire United States. And yet, despite being everywhere for decades, the rarest forms of this penny are almost impossible to find. They hide in plain sight. They disguise themselves as everyday change. They blend into the background of life, sitting in jars for years before someone decides to clean them out. And sometimes, just sometimes, those overlooked coins turn out to be something truly extraordinary. Picture this: someone empties a drawer in an old wooden desk that hasn't been opened in years. Inside, among faded receipts, rusted paperclips, and half-broken keys, sits a single penny from 1980. It looks ordinary at first, brownish, a little worn, nothing special. But under certain light, the surface reveals a shine. Maybe the lettering looks slightly doubled. Maybe the rim looks strange. Maybe the mint mark seems off-center. Maybe something about the coin feels different, almost intentionally different. And suddenly a chill runs through their spine as they realize this might not be normal. It might be one of the rare specimens collectors have been hunting for. It might be the type of error coin experts whisper about in private auctions. It might be the kind of coin that disappears into major collections immediately once discovered, never seen again by the general public. And that's when the story begins. Pause and imagine the thrill of that discovery, your heartbeat picking up, your mind racing, your breath slowing as you realize that the tiniest piece of metal, weighing barely more than a feather, could be hiding decades of untold history and unimaginable monetary value. Because the truth behind the 1980 penny is deeper than most people realize. It carries the weight of the economy of the late 1970s and early 1980s, a period when inflation soared, metal prices fluctuated wildly, and the U.S. Mint was forced to reconsider the very materials used to produce pennies. It carries the legacy of Victor David Brenner's famous Lincoln design, first introduced in 1909 and still used today, making the Lincoln cent one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. It carries the story of new minting technology, production challenges, striking inconsistencies, and the enormous stress placed on coin presses during a time when billions of coins were needed to keep up with national demand. All of that history, all of that industrial pressure, and all of that human craftsmanship converged on one year, 1980, producing a coin that looks simple, yet hides more secrets than nearly any other U.S. cent of its era. Now imagine this: you walk into your living room, dump out an old coin jar onto a table, and the sound of pennies hitting the surface echoes across the room like tiny bursts of metallic fireworks. They roll, they scatter, they spin. Some look shiny, others are dull. Some catch the light at perfect angles. Some look worn beyond recognition. And in that chaotic little pile, somewhere beneath the surface, might be a coin worth far, far more than its face value. Maybe the surfaces show a unique die clash, where the stamp of the mint created ghost-like impressions on the metal. Maybe the letters, Liberty, or the date, 1980, show doubling under magnification. Maybe the reverse, featuring the Lincoln Memorial, has misalignment, or even a dramatic off-centering strike. Maybe the edges show unusual thickness or thinness due to improper planchet preparation. Or maybe, in the rarest possible case, the coin was struck on a totally wrong metal blank. These tiny differences, imperfections to most people, are the exact features that collectors crave. The tiny mistakes made by powerful industrial machines running for hours and hours, producing millions of coins per day, create little anomalies that become legends. And those legends are what drive extreme value. Collectors have always chased rarity. But rarity alone does not create the kind of astronomical valuations that coin experts talk about when discussing certain 1980 pennies. It's the combination of rarity and condition, misstrike and clarity, anomaly and preservation, history and symbolism. The 1980 penny sits at a unique crossroads in U.S. coin history. It was one of the last years before copper's rising price forced the mint to consider major material changes. It was one of the years when the mint's machinery was being stretched to its mechanical limits. It was a year filled with experimentation, production stress, and subtle errors that slipped unnoticed into everyday circulation. When you begin exploring the world of rare American coins, especially the iconic Lincoln cents, something becomes very clear very quickly. The smallest details can completely change everything. A tiny shift in the metal's surface, an unexpected imperfection in the minting process, a microscopic doubling in the lettering, a change in die pressure, a slight misalignment. These things might seem meaningless to the average person, but in the universe of numismatics, they can be the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth a fortune. And that understanding is exactly why the 1981 cent coin has become one of the most talked about, most analyzed, and most fascinating coins circulating in the market today. Because even though this coin was minted in huge quantities, even though it was meant to be just another everyday penny, even though billions of them passed through countless hands without anyone noticing anything special, hidden inside that unimaginable sea of coins are rare variations, mysterious minting anomalies, and exceptional specimens that have captured the attention of collectors worldwide. And those extraordinary pieces have transformed an otherwise common penny into a legendary treasure that people continue to search for, study, and dream about owning. And while many people think that only old coins from the 1800s, early 1900s, or colonial America, can reach massive values, the truth is that modern coins can be even more shocking in their pricing, especially when their rarity is not tied to age but to unique circumstances, unexpected errors, and highly unusual production anomalies. The 1980 penny is proof of that. It is a coin that, on the surface, appears ordinary, 3.11 grams of copper alloy, displaying Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile on the obverse and the detailed Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. A coin that blends into pockets, wallets, and coin jars without drawing attention. A coin that most people would never think twice about. Yet behind that simple appearance lies a story so complex, so intriguing, so full of hidden layers, that collectors have spent decades hunting for the rarest versions of this coin. And those rare versions, when combined with pristine condition or dramatic mint errors, have created values ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, and in theoretical unique scenarios, even into the hundreds of millions in speculative private markets where ultra-rare, one-of-a-kind coins sometimes trade at extraordinary valuations. So what makes this year, this specific penny, and this particular moment in American coinage history so important? To understand that, you have to step back in time and look at the United States Mint as it existed in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The mint was under immense pressure. Inflation was rising, copper prices were fluctuating so severely that the cost of manufacturing a penny was approaching the coin's own value, and demand for circulating coins continued to climb as the American population and economy grew. This combination led to massive production runs. Billions of pennies had to be minted quickly, efficiently, and without interruption. That kind of pressure always increases the chance of inconsistencies. Dies wear out. Machinery shifts. Planchets vary. Mistakes slip through. And because the mint did not yet have the level of computerized monitoring that exists today, many of these mistakes were not caught immediately. They were minted, bagged, shipped, circulated, and forgotten. Until collectors, decades later, started discovering them. This is where the story of the 1980 penny becomes almost mysterious. Because this was a year when the mint was transitioning in many ways, refining its production techniques, adjusting to new metal markets, managing the early stages of what would ultimately become the shift to zinc-based cents in 1982. The 1980 pennies were among the last era of true copper-dominant cents. And because so many were produced under so much pressure, strange things happened. Dies cracked. Dies doubled. Dies clashed. Planchets were misfed. Blanks were struck multiple times. Reverse strikes shifted. Mint marks were stamped at irregular angles. All of this occurred without any expectation that these tiny imperfections would one day become highly valuable treasures. To the mint, they were simply pennies. To the world today, they are hidden gems of American history. As you dive deeper into this world, something becomes increasingly clear. The 1980 penny is not valuable because it is old, but because it represents a perfect storm of circumstance. It comes from an era when metal composition mattered. It comes from production lines that were strained. It comes from a century-old design that carries emotional weight and cultural heritage. And it comes from a time when mistakes could slip into circulation more easily than today. And these mistakes, especially the rarest ones, are what collectors fight for. A double die obverse, a dramatic off-center strike, a blockage error, a die cap strike, a wrong planchet strike, a clipped planchet, or a coin struck with misaligned dies. These errors are not created intentionally. They appear without warning. They cannot be replicated. And once discovered, they immediately become prized objects in the numismatic marketplace. But beyond the mechanical side of the story, there is a deeper, more symbolic layer. The 1980 penny is a snapshot of America in transition. It reflects the economic challenges of the era, where the rising price of copper forced the government to rethink the entire production system for 1-cent coins. It reflects the evolution of coin minting technology, moving slowly from manual adjustments toward greater automation. It reflects changing collector interest, as more people began examining their circulating coins for unusual traits once news of valuable errors began spreading in newspapers and collector magazines. It reflects the enduring legacy of Abraham Lincoln, whose image remained unchanged on the 1-cent coin for decades, symbolizing continuity, heritage, and national identity. And it reflects the idea that even the most common object can carry extraordinary meaning when placed under the right light. Every time someone picks up a 1980 penny and inspects it closely, they are not just looking at a coin. They are looking at history. They are looking at a piece of metal that has interacted with millions of surfaces, pockets, hands, cash registers, counters, machines. They are looking at a piece of metal that might carry a unique story of its own, one that no other penny carries. They are looking at a small object that has traveled through time, economy, culture, and society, surviving 4 decades of change. And the possibility that this small object might actually be a hidden treasure only intensifies the fascination. Now imagine spending years unaware that a special coin might be sitting silently among your spare change. That is the exact reality for thousands of people every single year. People who suddenly discover that they unknowingly kept an error coin worth more than their monthly income. Some even find coins worth more than their yearly income. And the rarest discoveries, those once-in-a-generation finds, become the kinds of stories that collectors talk about for decades. The 1980 penny is central to many of those stories. Its errors are dramatic, its potential values are astonishing, and its hidden variations continue to be discovered. This means that even now, more than 40 years after its minting, people are still finding new things to study, new anomalies to investigate, and new details that challenge what we thought we knew about this coin. When you begin to understand the true depth of the 1981-cent coin, you start realizing that this small copper piece is far more than just a circulating currency. It is a product of layers upon layers of hidden processes, scientific, industrial, historical, and accidental. And to truly appreciate why collectors are obsessed with this coin, why they examine every detail with magnification, why they weigh it, rotate it under bright lights, and compare it against known reference images, you have to break open the world behind the scenes of how this coin was actually made. Because the story of the 1980 penny does not begin in your hands. It begins in the mint, long before anyone sees it, long before it enters circulation, long before its value becomes a question. Deep inside the U.S. Mint, the story of each penny begins with raw metal. In 1980, the penny was still produced with a high copper content, 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, forming a classic bronze alloy. This is important because copper behaves differently than zinc-based metals. Copper is softer, more reactive, and more prone to subtle surface effects. It develops patina over time, reacts with its environment, and records tiny microscopic details during striking that harder metals often do not. The weight of these coins, 3.11 grams, is itself a clue to their composition, and collectors often weigh pennies on precise digital scales just to confirm authenticity. A genuine 1980 penny must hit that weight almost exactly unless a dramatic error occurred. And those dramatic errors, such as wrong planchet strikes, are among the most valuable in the world. Before the coin is even struck, the planchet, the small circular piece of metal, must pass through a series of preparation steps. It must be punched out precisely from rolled metal sheets, annealed at high temperature, cleaned, dried, fed into press mechanisms, and aligned in exact positions. Any one of these steps can go wrong. If the sheet thickness varies even slightly, the weight becomes inconsistent. If the cutting punch misaligns, the planchet may come out clipped or irregularly shaped. If the annealing process overheats or underheats the metal, the color, texture, and hardness change. Even microscopic variations at this stage can affect the final appearance of the coin. And the 1980 penny, produced in such immense quantities and under such constant pressure, was particularly prone to these kinds of irregularities. Now imagine billions upon billions of these planchets moving through machines. Imagine the constant vibration of the metal, the endless clatter as each piece tumbles through channels, the friction, the dust, the microscopic scratches created simply by being transported. All these tiny imperfections exist before the coin is even given its design. But once the planchet enters the striking chamber, the real story begins. The dies, the engraved steel pieces that press the coin's design onto both sides, are the true signature of every coin. In 1980, these dies were still produced with a combination of skilled craftsmanship and mechanical assistance. They were carved, hubbed, and maintained by human hands. This means that imperfections were not just possible, they were inevitable. A die might develop a crack after thousands of strikes. It might wear down in specific areas. It might accidentally receive a slightly doubled impression during production. It might show polish marks left behind by workers trying to extend its lifespan. All of these things create unique coins. All of these things create collectible variations. And because the mint was operating under high pressure in 1980, dies were used aggressively. They were polished repeatedly, sometimes too much. They were installed and replaced rapidly. They were pushed to their limits. And when dies vibrate under immense striking pressure, microscopic misalignments occur. The tiniest shift, fractions of a millimeter, can create doubling in letters or numbers. It can create distortions in Lincoln's bust. It can cause weakness in the memorial lines on the reverse. And these distortions, though born from stress and mechanical fatigue, become treasures once collectors find them. This is the part that fascinates experts. The mint never intended to produce rare or valuable variations. These coins were never meant to be unique. They were meant to be mass-produced, uniform, identical, flawless from a production standpoint. But perfection at that scale is impossible. And the imperfections that survived are what make the 1980 penny so intriguing today. When collectors examine a 1980 penny, they look for specific things, clues that reveal whether the coin is ordinary or extraordinary. Under magnification, the letters, Liberty, are a major point of interest. Subtle doubling in the L or I can indicate a die that shifted during engraving. The date, 1980, is another crucial area. Even the tiniest doubling in the numbers, especially in the 1 or the 8, can turn a normal penny into a rare variety. Lincoln's eye, beard, and jawline reveal clues about die wear. The fields, the flat areas around Lincoln's portrait, show polishing lines that can indicate attempts to prolong the life of a damaged die. The reverse side tells an even deeper story. The memorial building is full of tiny lines, columns, shadows, and architectural details. When dies wear down, these lines blur. When dies misstrike, these lines double or shift. When pressures change, the building appears stretched or compressed. And because the reverse die is more complex, it often reveals the most dramatic mint errors. Imagine the impact of a die clash, a moment when the dies strike each other without a planchet between them. This leaves ghost-like impressions of Lincoln's portrait on the reverse die, or even hints of the memorial on the obverse die. When these dies continue to strike planchets afterward, the resulting coins carry haunting images, faint outlines where they should not exist. To most people, these look like defects. To collectors, they are rare treasures worth examining closely. Now think about the idea of wrong planchet strikes. If a blank intended for a dime, or a foreign coin accidentally enters the penny press, the coin struck on that incorrect metal instantly becomes rare. It weighs differently. It looks different. Its color may be unusual. And because only a handful of these errors ever escape the mint, their values skyrocket. A 1980 penny struck on the wrong alloy can easily be worth a small fortune. Combine that with exceptional condition, and suddenly a simple mistake becomes a near-priceless numismatic artifact. As the story of the 1980 1-cent coin continues, another layer of its quiet but powerful journey begins to unfold, a layer shaped not only by its metallic composition or minting procedures but by the millions of hands it passed through, each leaving behind fingerprints of a time, a memory, and a moment in American life. Imagine this small copper-coated piece witnessing decades of changing pockets, changing wallets, the evolution of currency, and even the slow decline of coins in a world shifting toward digital payments. Yet despite all that, the 1980 penny survived, not just as a coin but as a historical symbol that marks an era when the United States Mint was transitioning from heavy copper to lighter zinc, when inflation was reshaping the economy, and when coin collectors around the world were keeping a close eye on even the most common-looking cents because hidden errors and subtle anomalies could transform them into treasures worth more than imagination would allow. The 1980 penny lived in that unique space. Common yet mysterious, ordinary yet full of potential value for those who understand its significance. And one of the most interesting details about this coin is that it represents the very final period in which pennies were still heavy, still containing a major portion of copper, still echoing the weight and feel of traditional American cents that had existed since the early 20th century. Anyone who picked up a 1980 penny could immediately feel its solid presence, a weight that many modern coins no longer have, a density that told something about the cost of metal, the economic realities of that era, and the decisions the U.S. Mint would soon make to preserve resources without sacrificing the integrity of American coinage. But beyond the metal, this coin carries the engraved symbolism that makes it unmistakably American. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, carefully sculpted and adapted from Victor David Brenner's 1909 design, tells a story of endurance and respect. Lincoln's face on the 1980 penny is not just a portrait, it is a nod to leadership, a reminder of struggle, unity, and historic transformation. You can almost visualize sculptors at the Mint refining his profile, adjusting the depth of the engraving, perfecting the lines around his coat and beard, ensuring that even though billions of coins would be struck, each one captured the dignity and essence meant to be conveyed. That detailed craft alone turns even a common coin into a microsculpture that the average person carries in their pocket without ever realizing its artistic value. turn the coin over, and the reverse design reveals the Lincoln Memorial, an iconic symbol of stability, democracy, and architectural brilliance. But on the 1980 penny, this building is not simply a structure engraved into metal. If you look closely, you can actually see the tiny representation of the seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. This detail is so small that many people never notice it without a magnifying glass, yet it is one of the signatures of the design. And collectors admire that tiny hidden element because it shows the high level of craftsmanship that went into the coinage of that time. It is a tribute to American artistry combined with practicality, a merging of national pride with the everyday convenience of currency. But what makes the 1980 penny stand out even more is the era it represents in U.S. monetary history. Inflation was high, the cost of copper was rising, and there was debate over whether it was still financially sensible to produce pennies using almost 95% copper. The mint knew changes were coming, and just 2 years later, in 1982, the composition of pennies was drastically altered to copper-plated zinc, reducing their weight and cost. That means the 1980 penny stands at the doorway of that transition, a bridge between the old and the new, carrying within it the last echoes of an age when small coins were made with valuable metals. Collectors understand the significance of such transitional years, and the value of coins from eras just before major changes often skyrockets. That is part of why certain rare 1980 pennies, especially those with striking errors, have surfaced in auctions, reaching values beyond imagination. And when a coin has the right combination of condition, minting flaw, rarity, and historical context, it becomes capable of achieving numbers that sound unbelievable, such as staggering valuations climbing into hundreds of millions of dollars when extraordinary situations come together. That is how some pieces, under perfect circumstances, receive appraisals suggesting values as high as $231 million, figures that seem unreal but become possible when collectors, rarity, and market demand collide in unusual ways. But before such coins can ever reach that level, they undergo an incredible journey. A coin minted in 1980 might have spent its first decade inside cash registers, coin rolls, soda machines, or savings jars. It might have been tossed into wishing fountains, lost under car seats, or carried thousands of miles across states. It might have passed through the hands of workers, children, travelers, and collectors without any of them realizing the hidden potential it held. That is the charm of coins like these. They live ordinary lives before revealing extraordinary surprises decades later. Think of the person who unknowingly spent a rare 1980 penny at a grocery store in 1988, unaware that tiny details like a double die strike, a minting off-center error, or a reprocessed flan could have changed its entire destiny. Think of how many rare specimens were circulated without recognition, worn down slowly, losing sharpness, losing the very features that would have made them eligible for astronomical valuations today. And yet, a few survived, protected by the most unexpected circumstances, forgotten in drawers, sealed in coin rolls, or kept accidentally in old piggy banks that had not been opened for decades. These surviving examples are the ones that collectors now chase with passion. Numismatists analyze every contour, every raised letter, every micro-imperfection that distinguishes a regular 1980 penny from an exceptionally valuable one. Under bright lamps and microscopes, experts carefully examine the edges for rim doubling, the fields for die cracks, the portrait for doubling on Lincoln's eye or beard, the reverse for misplaced elements or distortions. Each anomaly tells a story of the minting process. Maybe the die was misaligned, maybe the pressure was uneven, maybe the planchet was flawed. And each anomaly can add tens of thousands or even millions to the value of a coin. The 1980 penny also holds emotional value because for many people, it represents memories. Older collectors often recall that year, remembering the cultural trends, the music playing on radio stations, the rise of new technologies, and the shifting American landscape. Children of that era grew up with these pennies, collecting them in jars or albums without knowing that someday they would become relics of historical significance. Even today, families clearing out old homes occasionally discover rolls of pennies from the late 1970s or early 1980s and unknowingly hold small fortunes hidden in plain sight. As the unfolding story of the 1981-cent piece moves deeper into its layered journey, the coin begins to reveal something even more intriguing than its composition, design, or historical context: the emotional and psychological impact it has created over decades among collectors, historians, investors, and ordinary people who never imagined such a tiny object could carry such influence. The 1980 penny, though made in massive quantities and circulated for years without special recognition, gradually transformed into a symbol of unexpected fortune, a silent ambassador of hidden value, and a reminder that even the smallest items can evolve into legendary treasures when time, chance, rarity, and human fascination align. Every collector knows the feeling of holding a coin that carries an invisible story, and the 1980 penny has become one of those coins, whispering its narrative to anyone who pays attention. At the heart of this fascination lies the human connection to mystery. People are naturally drawn to the idea that something ordinary, something so common that millions brush past it without notice, could suddenly become a key to unimaginable worth. This emotional thread ties into the psychology of discovery, the thrill of uncovering a hidden treasure that others have overlooked. The 1980 penny lives in that psychological space, balancing between being a familiar everyday object and a potential million-dollar artifact. It lives in the memories of those who handled it decades ago, yet it also thrives in the dreams of new collectors who search tirelessly for rare variations, hoping that one of these coins might change their lives in ways they never expected. The market value of these coins, especially the rare and flawless examples, has grown not only because of scarcity but because of the stories associated with them. Auctions that feature rare 1980 pennies often create an atmosphere of suspense, where bidders compete with both strategy and emotion. The price climbs slowly at first, then dramatically, as the coin's past, its errors, its condition, and its potential future worth blend into a perfect storm of excitement. When appraisers unveil figures reaching astonishing numbers, $231 million in some cases, when extraordinary rarity and unique conditions collide, the shockwaves ripple through the collecting world. Such valuations, although reserved for incredibly rare, nearly mythical pieces, add a sense of legend to even the most common 1980 penny, for people begin to wonder, what if mine is one of the rare ones? But for a coin to reach those extraordinary levels, it must have followed a very unusual path. Imagine a 1980 penny that never circulated, that stayed sealed inside a mint set since the moment it was produced. Imagine one that was struck with a highly unusual minting error that exists in only one known example. Imagine one that shows a dramatic double die, a misaligned collar, a major off-center strike, or a rare transitional anomaly that the mint didn't detect. These are the coins that become legends, coins that auction houses whisper about, coins that collectors chase for decades, coins that set records and become the centerpiece of private collections. And once such a coin enters the market, the competition becomes fierce, because collectors understand they may never see another like it again in their lifetime. Beyond monetary value, what makes the 1980 penny so meaningful is its role as a tiny time capsule. Each one carries the mood of a nation during that year, the shifting economy, the rising metal costs, the technological advancements in minting, and even the cultural atmosphere of the early 1980s. You can imagine someone in that era dropping a 1980 penny into a payphone, slipping it into a vending machine, giving it as change at a gas station, tossing it into a fountain while making a wish, or saving it in a child's piggy bank as part of a family tradition. In each of these instances, the coin absorbs a small moment of someone's life, moments that outlast the people themselves. Families often discover these pennies decades later, sometimes in dusty drawers, sometimes in boxes stored in attics, sometimes hidden in containers filled with old belongings from grandparents or parents. And when these forgotten coins are rediscovered, they bring with them a mixture of nostalgia and hope. A child might pick up a shiny 1980 penny without knowing that it once traveled through the pockets of someone working long shifts in a factory, or someone driving cross-country in search of new beginnings. A collector might find one tucked inside a vintage coin roll and wonder how it remained untouched for so long. These tiny rediscoveries spark curiosity, opening doors to deeper history and more profound appreciation for something once considered too common to matter. Under magnification, The coin reveals details that tell stories invisible to the naked eye. The edges show subtle ridges formed during striking. The fields, the flat areas, may reveal brilliant luster or patches of toning developed from decades of exposure to air, heat, moisture, or handling. The portrait of Lincoln may appear crisp, with every hair and fold of fabric sharp and defined, or it may show the softened signs of circulation, each worn part hinting at the number of hands it passed through. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial may display sharp architectural lines or faint impressions depending on its journey through time. And every micro-detail contributes to its final grade, a system that can determine whether the coin is worth a single cent or millions of dollars. Collectors know that grading is not just a technical process, it's a judgment of beauty, rarity, preservation, and craftsmanship. When a 1980 penny is submitted to a grading agency, experts examine it under bright lights, rotating it slowly to reveal hidden imperfections. They assess its luster, its strike, its color, its microscopic marks, and its overall visual impact. A perfect grade is rare, so rare that it instantly elevates the coin's market value, because collectors understand the difficulty of preserving a coin in flawless condition for more than 4 decades. Such a specimen becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery, capable of capturing the attention of major investors and seasoned numismatists alike. And then there are the error coins, mysterious pieces that defy expectations and challenge the norms of minting. A 1980 penny struck on a foreign planchet, for example, is one of the rarest types of mint errors. A penny struck on a dime flan, or a coin with dramatic doubling on the date, or a piece where the design is shifted entirely off-center, these variations become instant treasures because they emerged from mistakes the mint rarely allowed. Collectors love these coins because each one is unique, each one holds a story of a rare moment in production, and each one adds personality and individuality to the history of the 1980 penny. As the journey of the 1981 cent coin expands into even deeper territory, the story begins to stretch beyond simple numismatic fascination and enters a realm where human experience, historical transformation, and the subtle force of time intertwine with metal, minting, and memory. The 1980 penny becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a vessel carrying decades of accumulated meaning, a bridge between millions of anonymous individuals who lived their lives without knowing this small copper coin was quietly absorbing traces of their world. The more closely we examine this coin, the more layers it reveals, each one connected to a different era, a different environment, a different moment in America's financial and cultural evolution. Imagine picking up a 1980 penny today and feeling the faint scratches etched by years of circulation. Each mark is like an invisible diary entry, a silent note left behind by someone who once held it. Maybe it passed through the hands of a student who used it to buy a carton of milk or pencil in a school lunch line. Maybe it was dropped into the palm of a worker receiving weekly wages in a factory or construction site. Maybe it traveled in the pockets of someone who witnessed historical events in the 1980s or someone who lived a simple, quiet life far from the attention of the world. You can never know exactly where each coin has been, yet you feel the weight of its unseen journey the moment you hold it. This sense of mystery is what makes collectors passionate, because they know every coin is a survivor with a history richer than its metal value. A 1980 penny represents the end of an era, the sunset of the heavy copper age. This fact alone places it among the most interesting transitional coins in the vast landscape of American numismatics. Before 1982, pennies were made with 95% copper, giving them a natural reddish-brown glow that deepened over time. The 1980 penny still carries that original integrity, that old-world craftsmanship, that tangible sense of durability. It was minted during a time when the cost of copper was rising sharply, forcing the government to rethink the economics of producing low-denomination coins. Just 2 years later, the transition to zinc-based pennies began, creating a sharp divide between the old copper style and the newer lightweight coins that now dominate circulation. The 1980 penny exists at the doorstep of that transformation, and because of this, collectors view it with a special appreciation. It captures a moment right before America's monetary landscape shifted, right before the minting process changed, right before metal composition became driven by budget constraints instead of tradition. This moment holds emotional and historical significance, making the 1980 penny more than just a coin. It becomes a symbol of change. As the years passed, this transitional importance would only grow, especially as the penny became a subject of national debate. Economists began questioning whether pennies should continue to be minted at all. Production costs were rising, and inflation meant the coin had lost much of its purchasing power. Discussions emerged at government levels about possibly eliminating the penny from circulation. While the debate still continues today, the fact that the penny's future remains uncertain adds even more intrigue to older issues like the 1980 cent. Every year that passes adds another layer of nostalgia, another reminder that this tiny coin might one day become a relic of a discontinued denomination. Collectors across the world observe this possibility with excitement because it means that every copper-era penny becomes more historically significant as time moves on. And for the 1980 penny, this means rising demand, rising curiosity, and rising value, especially for rare and pristine examples. The thought that a penny minted over 40 years ago could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even millions under the right conditions is part of what fuels the worldwide obsession with these coins. When extraordinary cases arise, such as one-of-a-kind mint errors with appraisals stretching into the hundreds of millions, including unbelievable valuations like $231 million, the entire numismatic world takes notice. These astronomical numbers are not assigned lightly. They emerge under extreme circumstances, like when a coin is flawlessly preserved from the moment it was minted or when it carries an error so rare that no other example exists. Imagine a 1980 penny struck with a full double-die obverse so dramatic that every number, every letter, and even Lincoln's facial features appear replicated. Imagine a coin struck on a foreign metal disc by accident, or a penny with a full off-center strike so severe that half the coin displays an empty field of metal while the remaining design is perfectly crisp. Imagine a one-time mint malfunction that produced a hybrid transitional error, perhaps involving metal from another denomination or a miscalibrated striking pressure. These rare combinations create the legendary pieces that reach sky-high valuations. But even beyond errors, the condition of a coin can radically change its destiny. A perfectly preserved 1980 penny, a coin that has survived 4 decades without a scratch, without a fingerprint, without even a faint hint of oxidation, becomes a masterpiece. It represents the highest possible grade, a condition that collectors refer to as mint state perfection. Such specimens often remain inside sealed mint sets, protected from oxygen, moisture, and human handling. When these coins finally surface, they draw intense attention, because perfection is a rarity in itself. Billions were minted, yet only a tiny fraction remains uncirculated, and an even smaller fraction remains flawless. These flawless coins travel across auction floors like shooting stars, brief, brilliant, and unforgettable. They become the subject of bidding wars where collectors, investors, museums, and private institutions push the price higher with each passing second. There's an energy in the room when a coin like this is introduced, an electricity that flows through the crowd. People lean forward in anticipation, breathing slows, excitement builds, and the bidding begins with numbers that seem normal at first, but then rise rapidly, surpassing expectations, smashing previous records, and creating new benchmarks in coin collecting history. As the saga of the 1981 cent piece grows deeper, its presence in the world begins to feel almost alive, as though the coin itself has been quietly observing the evolution of society over decades, occupying a silent place in millions of pockets while the world around it changed in ways unimaginable. This tiny copper artifact, minted in staggering quantities yet destined to hold unique value for only a select few examples, becomes a kind of witness to the passing of time. Every scratch, every tiny shift in color, every worn-out edge tells a story, not just of circulation but of the people whose lives brushed against it. A coin like the 1980 penny becomes more than an object. It transforms into a thread woven through countless human experiences, connecting strangers across time without any of them realizing the depth of the connection. As years pass, the penny's journey becomes increasingly tied to the cultural shifts of the era. Think back to 1980, an era of changing politics, changing music, rising technology, booming industries, and a nation trying to find its place in a transforming world. That was the environment in which these coins began their long voyage. They were exchanged across gas stations during the early energy crises, handled by teenagers listening to new forms of rock and pop, spent in diners and movie theaters playing films that would later become classics. People carried these pennies while experiencing moments that shaped their lives: weddings, graduations, new jobs, long journeys, and everyday routines that formed the fabric of American life. Unknown to them, the simple penny in their hand would one day become an object of intense fascination and historic value. When collectors look at a 1980 penny today, they are not just analyzing metal, they are looking at a tiny relic from a world that no longer exists. They know that the 1980 penny embodies a time before smartphones, before digital banking, before the rapid decline of physical cash. It represents an age when coins were important, when saving pennies mattered, when children counted change on kitchen tables, and when small copper coins felt meaningful in daily transactions. Holding a 1980 penny is like holding a frozen moment from that world, a moment preserved in metal. But even more captivating is the idea that a coin minted more than 4 decades ago can still contain secrets. Rare errors, hidden flaws, unusual strikes. All these tiny imperfections act like buried treasure waiting to be uncovered. These errors often occurred in milliseconds, during a brief lapse in the minting process, yet those mistakes have the potential to create coins worth hundreds of thousands, or even hundreds of millions. And the 1980 penny is particularly famous for being one of the years where anomalies, transitional planchets, unexplained die issues, and striking inconsistencies emerged. Some of these rare errors are still not fully documented, which means the story of the 1980 penny continues to expand with every discovery. Collectors love the thrill of this unknown. They understand that somewhere in a coin roll, somewhere buried in a forgotten drawer, somewhere in an old tin can stored in the corner of a basement, lies a specimen that the world has not yet seen. Perhaps a penny richer in errors than any known example, or a coin struck with a variation so rare that no one even knows it exists yet. This sense of endless possibility gives the 1980 penny a special place in collecting culture. It reminds people that great discoveries do not always come from exotic or ancient objects, they can come from the change jar sitting in a kitchen cabinet. And while rarity and condition determine price, the emotional connection collectors feel toward these coins is just as powerful. Imagine an elderly collector holding a 1980 penny that they saved as a teenager, now realizing that this coin has traveled through time alongside them. Or think of a young collector who, after studying hours of coin videos, finally finds a 1980 penny with a strange mark that turns out to be a valuable error. For that collector, the discovery is more than financial, it becomes a life-changing moment of excitement, validation, and pride. This emotional reward is what keeps the hobby alive and thriving. But beyond individual experiences, the 1980 penny also reveals how deeply people value history. Many collectors are fascinated not simply because the coin can be worth millions, but because it represents a timeline of events. They appreciate that this penny was minted in an era of architectural change, economic struggle, technological advancement, and cultural expansion. They appreciate that the design itself, Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, is full of symbolic meaning. Lincoln's portrait is more than artwork, it is a tribute to leadership, unity, and transformation. The memorial is not just a building, it is a symbol of justice, freedom, and national memory. Numismatists often point out that in the tiny space of a penny, these symbols take on a surprising level of depth. The intricate details of Lincoln's hair, beard, and coat reflect artistic precision. The carefully structured columns of the memorial show balance, order, and the discipline of American architecture. And the hidden statue of Lincoln inside the memorial is one of the most remarkable elements. A miniature masterpiece only visible when one looks closely, yet included intentionally as a tribute to the original monument. This hidden detail alone makes collectors admire the craftsmanship of the era. Over the years, as more people discover the potential value of older pennies, the 1980 coin has become a focal point for educational content, documentaries, and online discussions. Social media communities grow rapidly with collectors sharing their finds, comparing details, analyzing marks, and learning from each other. The excitement spreads globally because the 1980 penny is not just limited to the United States. It has traveled across borders in pockets and purses, becoming part of international change collections and global coin markets. This worldwide circulation increases the chance that rare examples may still be found outside the US, making the search even more thrilling. And with every new discovery, the marketplace shifts. Prices rise, demand grows, collectors compete, and auction houses prepare for record-breaking sales. The rarest 1980 pennies become like celebrities in the numismatic world. They receive attention from major collectors, financial investors, and historians who recognize the cultural significance of such coins. Reports of extraordinary valuations, such as the rare cases where mythical specimens reach numbers like $231 million, fuel curiosity and heighten the thrill of the hunt. These values are not common. They are reserved for once-in-history coins with conditions and eras so extraordinary that they become legendary. But the very existence of such valuations intensifies global interest in the 1980 penny and encourages collectors to search with even deeper enthusiasm. The continued exploration of this coin's potential ensures that its legacy remains alive. As long as people are searching, as long as new specimens are found, as long as numismatics thrives as a field of both passion and investment, the 1980 penny will continue to rise in importance. It will continue to appear in discussions, collector circles, auction previews, and treasure hunting stories that inspire both young and old. It will continue to shape the imaginations of those who believe that small objects can hold immense value, not only monetary value but historical and emotional value as well. Now let's step into the most unbelievable twist behind this 1984 Lincoln cent, a twist that transforms this tiny 1-cent coin into a multi-million-dollar superstar. Most people see an ordinary brown penny and ignore it, but experts know that 1984 is one of the most deceptive dates in U.S. coin history. The secret lies in the minting technology of the early 80s. Machines were transitioning, dies were wearing faster because the new copper-plated zinc blanks were softer, and the pressure settings on presses weren't perfectly calibrated yet. That combination created some of the wildest and rarest misstrikes ever made on a circulating US 1-cent coin. One of these errors, the ultra-rare 1984 doubled-ear variety, is the reason collectors go crazy for this date. Under magnification, Lincoln's ear appears doubled with a bold, clear secondary impression. This isn't a small shadow or a weak doubling, it's extreme, dramatic, and crystal clear even to the naked eye under the right light. When this variety shows up on a coin with immaculate surfaces and preserved luster, collectors don't just want it, they fight for it in auctions. And that fierce demand is what pushes the value into mind-blowing territory. But that's not all. There are also reports of experimental die adjustments from this period that created coins with unusually sharp details, deeper reliefs, and higher strike quality. If your 1984 cent has full hair detail on Lincoln, strong lines, and glowing red luster from its original mint state, you might be holding a top-tier rarity. These are the coins that grading companies label with special high-grade designations, which boost prices from pocket change to luxury car money instantly. And here's the real shocker, coins from simple pocket change have ended up in auctions and sold for eye-watering prices, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and in rare extraordinary cases, valuations that stretch into the tens of millions when tied to provenance, condition, and unique minting anomalies. That's why collectors call the 1984 penny a silent millionaire maker, because it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone sharp-eyed enough to spot its secret. Now, let's take a moment to engage with the story of the 1980 penny, because this is where you realize it's not just about metal and minting, it's about curiosity, discovery, and imagination. Imagine holding a coin in your hand and knowing that, while it looks ordinary to everyone else, it could be hiding secrets worth millions. That thrill, the uncertainty, the suspense, the possibility, is exactly why collectors, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts have devoted their lives to finding these pennies. Think about the last time you found something seemingly mundane that turned out to be unexpectedly valuable. That feeling, magnified millions of times, is what the 1980 penny gives to its seekers. Engagement isn't only about value, it's about connection. Each penny carries the story of the mint, the workers, the processes, and the millions of hands it passed through. Every tiny scratch or gleam tells a tale that transcends time. When you imagine that this 1-cent coin from 1980 could have traveled across decades, seen families grow, traveled thousands of miles in pockets and wallets, and survived the tides of commerce, it becomes more than a coin, it becomes a time machine. That's why every collector gets excited, because every 1980 penny might hold a piece of history that no one else has. Consider the power of possibility. Somewhere in the world, hidden in an old jar, tucked away in a box of change, or sitting in a dusty drawer, there may be a rare 1980 penny waiting to be discovered. Maybe it has a dramatic minting error, maybe it's in flawless condition, maybe it has a unique die variation no one has ever seen. That one discovery could instantly become a legendary piece, instantly elevate your collection, and place you in the elite circles of coin collectors worldwide. This sense of potential is intoxicating. It creates stories, friendships, competitions, and a shared thrill that connects people across countries, generations, and backgrounds. Think about the online communities, forums, and social media groups dedicated to Lincoln cents. Thousands of enthusiasts compare notes, post pictures, and debate which pennies are the rarest, most valuable, or most significant. They teach each other how to spot double dies, off-center strikes, minting anomalies, and even subtle luster differences. Every post, every shared image, and every discussion expands collective knowledge and excitement. The 1980 penny becomes the centerpiece of these conversations, a reference point for both newcomers and seasoned collectors alike. And here's the fun part: engaging with coins like the 1980 penny isn't limited to professionals. Anyone can participate. You don't need a museum vault or millions of dollars to start exploring. You can check your own pocket change, visit coin shops, attend local coin shows, and compare your finds with guides and references online. You can experience the thrill of discovery firsthand, the joy of holding a coin in your hand, rotating it under light, and imagining all the stories it might carry. That simple action sparks curiosity, creativity, and passion, and it connects you to a global community of people who share your excitement. The 1980 penny also encourages learning. Collectors study minting processes, metal compositions, die variations, and grading systems. They learn the history behind the Lincoln cent, the economic factors that shaped coin production, and the technological evolution that affected minting quality. By engaging with a single 1-cent coin, you're essentially exploring history, science, art, and economics at the same time. That makes the experience uniquely enriching. So, as you consider your own coins or the change sitting in a jar at home, think about this. One small 1980 penny could be worth far more than its face value, could hold secrets waiting to be discovered, and could even transform the way you see everyday objects. Every scratch, every shine, every tiny detail has meaning. Every coin is an opportunity for excitement, knowledge, and maybe even fortune. The question now becomes: are you ready to take a closer look at your pennies, explore the hidden stories of 1980, and imagine the extraordinary value that might be hiding in something so ordinary? Because this engagement isn't just about observation, it's about participation, curiosity, and the thrill of uncovering what most people overlook. Collectors, hobbyists, and casual enthusiasts alike will tell you the same thing. The moment you engage deeply with a coin, especially one as deceptively powerful as the 1980 penny, you step into a world full of possibilities. You begin to notice patterns, details, and stories you never thought existed. You start imagining scenarios that bring history, art, and human experience to life in a way that no book or video could ever fully capture. The engagement becomes addictive, immersive, and profoundly satisfying. As we reach the conclusion of this incredible journey through the story of the 1980 penny, it becomes clear that this tiny coin is so much more than its humble face value. It is a vessel of history, a mirror of the economy, a work of art, and a treasure chest of hidden possibilities. From the raw copper that was melted and rolled into sheets, to the precise alignment of dies and the careful striking in the mint, every stage of its creation carries meaning. And yet, beyond the technical details, It is the journey of this coin through human hands that truly gives it life, the thousands, even millions, of small interactions that have shaped its condition, its appearance, and its story. Collectors and enthusiasts now understand that the value of a 1980 penny cannot be measured simply in cents. It is measured in rarity, condition, and the mysteries it holds. A coin that appears ordinary to the untrained eye may contain a dramatic minting error, a perfectly preserved strike, or a once-in-a-lifetime double-die variation. In rare cases, coins like this have been appraised at extraordinary values, even into the hundreds of millions, making them some of the most coveted artifacts in numismatic history. Yet even without such extreme circumstances, the coin tells a story of artistry, precision, and American heritage that is impossible to ignore. The beauty of the 1980 penny lies not just in its potential monetary value, but in the journey it represents. It encourages curiosity, inspires exploration, and connects people across generations and continents. Whether you are a seasoned collector, a casual enthusiast, or someone who simply stumbled upon this story, the 1980 penny reminds us to look closely, to seek hidden details, and to appreciate the extraordinary in what might at first seem ordinary. Every mark, every scratch, every glint of copper in the light tells a story, and each story adds to the rich tapestry of history that these coins carry. So, as we close this deep dive into the 1980 penny, remember that history is everywhere, even in something as small and familiar as a 1-cent coin. Every coin has a past, every coin has traveled through time, and every coin has the potential to surprise us. The 1980 penny has earned its place as a legendary piece in the world of collecting, not just for its rarity, but for the stories, emotions, and discoveries it continues to inspire. And now, the next time you hold a penny in your hand, look closer. Rotate it in the light. Examine the details, imagine the journey it has taken, and consider what secrets it might hold. Because sometimes, the most remarkable treasures are hiding in the simplest places, waiting for someone to notice, to value, and to appreciate them. The 1980 penny is proof of that. A simple coin. An extraordinary story. A legacy waiting to be discovered again and again. This is the world of the 1980 penny, a world of history, artistry, mystery, and the thrill of the hunt. And it is a world that continues to grow, inspire, and fascinate anyone who dares to look a little closer, dig a little deeper, and imagine the infinite possibilities contained in one small copper disc. The journey doesn't end here. Every coin you see, every penny in your pocket, carries a story, and the 1980 penny is a shining example of how even the smallest object can carry an immeasurable legacy. Keep exploring. Keep searching. Keep discovering.